Mikey in touch. Who's missing?
Doesn't even have a chair, does he?
Yeah, right there, right next to Mary Ann.
My name is Annette Smith. I'm Executive Director of Vermonters for a Clean Environment. And for those of you who are not familiar with Vermonters for a Clean Environment, we are a grassroots organization that started 15 years ago in response to a natural gas power plant and pipeline project proposed for Bennington and Buncombe counties. Since then, we have been working with citizens all over the state on a variety of issues, including quarries, landfills, large farms, and in water issues. We worked on the groundwater protection law with the NRC and other groups. And since 2009, April of 2009, we've been working on the wind issue. And in most recent times, we have been working on the solar issue. One of the things that we do is we assist citizens in participating in the regulatory process. So over the years, we've assisted citizens with large farm permitting, with A&R permitting, with Act 250, and I am kind of chagrined to say in the last few years we've had to become expert on the Public Service Board process. So we are, shall we say, where the rubber meets the road in terms of the policies that you are putting in place here. I think if anyone thinks that the policies that encourage renewable energy are working well for our communities, then spend a little time talking to me, and I can tell you story after story after story of how badly it's going. And I have been working on a proposal not only to come up with a different process, one that I think will help move us forward in a much more productive way. But I want to start with the bill H.40, which I have, I think, reviewed enough to the point where I think I understand it. I love the name. I think this is a great opportunity for us to solve and fix the problems that we have seen develop out of the speed program. I am interested in Vermont having an honest energy policy, and I don't see that H.40 gets us there. I do understand the need for the utilities to be able to deal with the potential rate increase issue, and so that is one step, the first step, in getting us to a more honest energy policy. But I have some real concerns about the rest of the bill because of all the problems that we need to solve now. And I think that we really need to take the time to add in a process that works for our communities. So I see that what you've got here is half a bill, which on the one hand makes sense since it was written by the utilities, the developers, and the renewable energy advocates. But it is, that process has left out the communities and the people who are being affected by these policies on the ground. So, anything that we can do to get us to a place where Vermonters are actually getting renewable energy is my goal. I live off-grid with solar, and I have for 25 years in Vermont. So I have a very serious understanding of the opportunities and the limitations of especially solar energy. I don't have a wind spot. There are a number of things in this bill that, to my mind, are doing what I've seen happening over time with renewable energy legislation, and that is taking more power away from the Public Service Board. For instance, the section in the bill about B2 and need. I think the Public Service Board ought to have that back. I understand that's actually already in legislation that's been moved forward, but that, the part about pre-approving costs, the part about the utility being able to get the opportunity to bill back their customers for infrastructure, that's something that the Vermont Gas went to the board with. I don't think that the legislature should be usurping more authority from the board. Over time, I've seen the board has become kind of diminished in a way sort of spread too thin because they've had to deal with more and more siting issues, which they are not good at doing. I would...
Nick, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
Will you at some point point out those spots in the bill that, you don't have to do it now, but... will you
If
at
somebody
some
can give me a
point-
hard copy, I will. I read it online and
Okay.
I didn't, my printers are...
But finish your, you don't have to do it now.
Yeah, I'll be glad to show you those sections. 2 of them are underlined as new, 1 of them is not. But I wanted to call them out to you as places where I really think that the board needs to do its job and give them more authority. Don't take their authority away. But on the siting issues, they are not applying Act 250 Clichy analysis properly. That's something that I sent to all of you so that you could review that. They're actually citing opinions by 2 aesthetics experts instead of the authority and the legal precedent that has been in place since 1986. So there have some suggestions for adding some language to the bill. And one is that the fact is renewable energy costs more. And what this bill is doing is kind of still enabling the sale of the high-price RECs, the wind and solar, and meeting the goals that we've had with Hydro-Quebec RECs. And there's a lot of confusion amongst people out in the marketplace about what's going on. I only recently found out that Sun Common, for their community solar projects, they're selling the RECs. But they're not necessarily forthcoming about it. You have to know enough to ask. So I would recommend that this bill add language requiring the utility, requiring anyone to have full disclosure about the RECs, whatever materials are used, so that there is a clear and honest report on whether it's utilities websites, whether it's solar developer websites, whether it's wind developers websites, whether it's applications, whether it's CPGs, that the disposition of RECs is clear, transparent, and honest. I think that what I see is Vermonters want renewable energy. They want to be a part of it. So projects that are what I call the plunk it down model. Comes in, buys a site, plunks it down, the neighbors get the 45-day notice. They have nobody to turn to. And they say, well, but we want to buy the power. And so we have a complete disconnect between the policies that you're putting in place and how it's playing out in our communities. I would challenge any of you to tell me what it takes to participate in that public service board process. I think Chairman Volks is the only one who thinks it's working all right. But it is brutal. We have helped citizens participate in enforcement cases, which the board can't deal with at all. We've helped citizens participate in 2-megawatt solar cases, so that it's from the whole contested case with the discovery. We've seen citizens serve 290 discovery questions. Each response has to be on 1 page, question and answer. Then you have to send it in notarized. Just to intervene, you have to file a motion to intervene. Nobody helps you with that. There is nobody to help you. You have to file a notice of appearance. And then if it's a fast-track project, if you think you're just going to file comments for the 150 and 500 kilowatt ones, and then the decision comes out and you want to ask them to reconsider, if you haven't intervened, then you're just filing public comment and you didn't even know that. So to do a whole intervention, even on the small ones, you have to do a cover letter, a motion to intervene, a certificate of service, a notice of appearance, and a motion to intervene. You have to file 5 documents. Nowhere does anybody tell you how to do that. When you get into the big cases, what I have to tell citizens when they contact me about these, and I'm getting more and more and more of them all the time, is if you hire a lawyer and experts, you will spend a lot of money. It's not out of the question. One solar case, I'm aware they've spent $35,000 at the board. Another one, they're over $100,000. And you will lose. You can participate on your own, and I'll help you do it if you want. And you will be treated badly, and you will lose. The Public Service Board is, in every case, saying the legislature has told us to approve solar, and so that's what we're going to do. That was in the Charlotte decision. And also, the challenge for the neighbors is they go in and they get granted intervention. They get granted party status. And then, in every case, the footnote at the bottom says that the neighbors have an interest that is a more individualized interest than the interests of the average Vermonter, average person, and therefore they don't count. So it's very much like leading the lambs to slaughter. Yes, I can help you participate. You can go in, you can do everything that they want you to do, and then at the end you're going to be dismissed because if you're a neighbor, you don't count, and that's totally wrong. That's not what the Queechee analysis is about, but that's wrong. And also, the legislature's told us to approve these things. So I don't necessarily blame the board for what they're doing, but on the other hand, there's this sort of ping pong we're playing where people go to the board and say, wait a minute, we're not getting taken seriously, and then they say, if you don't like it, come back to the legislature, and then you guys call in the chair who says everything's working fine. Everything is not working fine. I was stuck in traffic and I heard the Vermont Edition show today, and somebody called in, and a lot of people are really, really upset about what's happening with our landscape with solar. And somebody called in with that question, and the response from the Middlebury College professors were, well, this is wonderful, this is Vermont, the wonderful thing is we have community and you can do something about it. Well, you can't do anything about it from a community perspective, because the Public Service Board, again, is not, they just give due consideration to town plans. They are not looking at the zoning part for the clear written community standard, which Act 250 always did. And so they're misapplying the law, and they just don't know what they're doing. So from when I look at this legislation and I see that it's geared towards really ramping up in 2017, we've got to change this process so that the communities that want the solar, and wind if they want it, have a process that they can come together around and look for good sites, work with the developer. Right now what we have is a contested case scenario. It is enriching lawyers, and it is resulting in very bad projects. Standard offer is a real problem because the standard offer projects, some of the worst sites, we've got one that's almost entirely Class 2 wetlands. We've got another where the developer said in one community where they had the standard offer project, why are you here? Well, we're here because it's an open field. If this involved cutting 15 acres of trees, we wouldn't be here. The same developer is planning to cut 30 acres of trees in Bennington and 40 acres of trees in Rutland. So we're seeing some ethical issues too, where they tell one community one thing and one community another, but the sites are locked in. So for instance, Barton Solar, the standard offer contract came in December 2012. The neighbors don't find out about it until October 2013. Then they're put through this huge process where everything that they submit, including the idea of even getting some screening for the people who look out on it, just completely ignored. And then at the end of the day, the Public Service Board approves it, and the site's already locked in. There's no way to look at any alternative site. There's no way to do anything else. In that case, we just agreed to help them participate. That was all. Then I find out through testimony that the site is almost entirely a Class 2 wetland, and the way I find out is because the Agency of Natural Resources has submitted a memorandum of understanding to put in the record in the testimony, and it's about the wetlands, only the wetlands application hasn't been applied for. So all the things that, and this goes to the wind issue too, all the things that I thought mattered in terms of how we look out for our communities, how we look out for our environment, and how we can build new energy in a community-supported way are not happening. Instead, it's a horrible process. And this bill has got to add a component in it that begins to solve the problems and grapple with the problems. If you just want to keep doing more and more and more of this, the first thing people say about the solar when it's literally plunked down in their backyard or their front yard is, what about our property values? Well, I can tell you, cumulatively, over time, this is going to degrade our state's grand list. There is no question. We're seeing it with the wind issue. I've done some deep dives into sales around Sutton. There have been sales. They've all been below town assessed value. They've all been below the listed value. And there's tons of property up there that is just not selling. So how much more can this state afford to do with bad siting? We're seeing prime ag soils, as I mentioned, clear-cutting forests. If this really is what you're intending to do, I mean, we heard the developers come in and answer questions to the public about why are you here? Well, yeah, it is kind of unusual because other states have zoning. Other states have local control. The fact that we don't have home rule has opened the door to what is really a feeding frenzy. I serve on the Rutland Regional Planning Commission and also chair the Energy Committee there. And at one point, a representative of Green Mountain Power came in last year, and we said to him, please, can you please talk to these solar developers and ask them to start with our planning commissions. Don't choose your sites and lock them in and apply. He said, all we can do is influence the ones that we're working with in Rutland City. And then he said, outside of that, it's the Wild West. And that's Green Mountain Power's person saying that. And that really is what's happening. And it's every application that goes in is getting rubber stamped, and those projects are getting built. You see people from New Jersey, from Wall Street, making a lot of money on our landscape. And if you pass this bill the way it is, you're not doing anything to help. Now, here's my idea. So I've been thinking about this for quite a while, and because of the work that I've done on all these different areas and permitting, my idea is actually a very large regulatory reform proposal. But I'm going to start with what I think will work for renewable energy. And that is that I'm suggesting that we start by using the Act 250 infrastructure. Now, not the law necessarily. I'm talking about the infrastructure. So here are the complaints with the Public Service Board. There's nobody to talk to. They have a terrible database. The website, good luck finding anything. They don't do enforcement, and there is never an opportunity for people to sit down and talk. It's entirely a lawyer's game. What the opportunity is that we have with the Act 250 infrastructures, we have district coordinators. We have the A&R Act 250 database, which is excellent. They've managed to figure out how to post things for every docket they have. We have enforcement. They already have enforcement. And so my suggestion is to create that opportunity for people to come together and sit down and work out their issues ahead of time. So to have a community-based stakeholder process that can be facilitated by the district coordinators who are already in the jobs. I don't think Act 250 is very busy these days. We already have this spread around the state. There was a conference at Harvard Law School that I attended, and it was sponsored by the Department of Energy. It was in 2011, and it was specifically for wind developers. You had to apply to get in. There were 100 of us there. There were 30 wind developers, 30 people from communities, 30 regulators. There were a couple of regulators from Vermont there. Jeannie Elias was one of them. And it was Lawrence Susskind, the founder of the Alternative Dispute Resolution Program for Harvard Law School, and who founded the Consensus Building Institute, teaching the wind developers how to do community-based stakeholder processes. They said, you're not getting your projects built, and his opinion was, you're not making good deals either. So mutual gains negotiations. We have done this with OMIA. We have done it with J.P. Carrera and Sons Quarry in East Middlebury, or Gravel Pit. We've done it with the state on the use of chloramine in drinking water. We at least need to create the opportunity for the people who live in the area, the developers, to come together, find good sites, agree, and stop fighting. Because what we're doing right now is not working, and it is creating bad process. And former town clerk in Pulteney, 85 years old, said to me yesterday, you know, it's a real shame that we have to sell our houses so that we don't have to look at these things if we can sell our houses. So what you are doing here has real consequences on the ground. Now my next step on this is what happens if people want to fight instead of work together. Well, then the next step is that you create the incentive for them to work together and to come up with better projects by having the applicant put up intervenor funding and having the state put up the counsel for the public. New Hampshire has a counsel for the public out of the AG's office. His name is Peter Roth. He represents anybody who's not represented by counsel. So one of the problems with Act 250 has always been is one hand clapping, unless you have somebody on the other side. Okay? If you don't want to find a site and work with the community through a stakeholder process where you do joint fact-finding, you agree on the experts to hire so that you don't have these dueling experts, it saves a lot of money because it's not contested case, but if you want to fight, then empower the public to have a seat at the table and give the body that hears it the opportunity to hear all the information. So when I said I have a big regulatory reform proposal, to keep the Public Service Board to do the jobs that they were set up to do. Need, reliability, interconnection, rates, especially the keeping the, they got plenty of work to do there. And I've looked at how to change the Public Service Board process, and I just don't think that there's any way. The contested case is needed for the utilities and those folks who are in the room on that. And I can't come up with any way to fix it for the public. They don't know how to relate to the public, and I think that it's better to use systems that we have already in place that are easier for people to get to and then create the opportunity to work together. So I'm suggesting that now is we have an opportunity, because right now what we have is a completely different set of standards for Act 250 than for renewable energy. You can't do the stuff on prime ag soil that's happening right now with renewable energy in Act 250. So I went to an AIB conference about a year ago and was kind of entertained to be in the room with all these developers who were very upset about Act 250. And I'm thinking, boy, if they knew what you could get away with renewable energy development, you just switch businesses, because that's where you can do pretty much anything. Prime ag soils, wetlands, you name it, flood hazard zones, anything. Cut forests, fine. So I think that the state has reached a point where we need a professional board that looks at all land use. That includes agriculture appeals. At that AIB conference I heard David Mears complaining about they're getting more and more appeals of A&R permits. Well, A&R needs to do a better job down on the level with the public, and then if there is only one contested case, then that gives the developers have been saying, we don't like this 2 bites at an apple. And so this is a major change I'm proposing, but one that will take a little time to put in place if it's decided that we want to do it. But I see the opportunity right now to have a professional board that looks at all land use, that's not bifurcating it the way we have it right now. We've got all these little silos, and I think that it's time, and then it's it's appealable only to the Supreme Court. So that's my whole little picture in one, which is complicated on the one hand, but it's not fixed. It's simply for talking points. How can we completely turn this fight that we're having over renewable energy into something that works for our communities and that brings people together to build the renewable energy that people want, and that gives them the opportunity to buy into it too. And that's the sort of the framework that I've been looking at.
Proposing that for this bill?
I am proposing that this bill, and I understand you want to get it out pretty quickly, that if you don't take testimony on a new process, that at least it has a placeholder to look at how to change this dynamic and create the opportunity for a collaborative process, even if that's the only piece of it that you do, that can start at the regional level, and then if it doesn't work and people want to fight about it, give people the tools to the intervenor funding and the Office of the Counsel for the Public, so that we can have a contested case that's fair.
Let's be honest with you. What you're proposing is a total rewrite of the regulatory system, which is fine, but I don't think that that's a place in a bill that's a place for a bill in and of itself.
Right, I agree with you.
That would take way more than this committee. That's as major, I would
That's
think,
why I
as
broke it out
reforming
into,
the education system.
that's why I broke it out into something
Right.
simple to start with.
Right,
How do
so-
we create the place where
Okay,
people can work together?
So I don't think anybody is opposed to having those conversations. I would have some. I don't know how you'd ever get a bill out in this year.
And I think it's not a one-year bill. I think that's a conversation to have longer. But I do think that in this bill, there needs to be an acknowledgement that the system that is in place right now isn't working. And if anybody else has any other ideas, let's talk about them, because, I mean, the wind issue has created huge problems around the 3 areas that have wind turbines, and there are people in Vermonters who are suffering from the Hoosac Wind Project in northern Massachusetts. These are very, very serious problems, and the Public Service Board has not been able to deal with it. This legislation will enable more of it. It doesn't do anything to say, let's grapple with the issues we have before Iberdrola, which has applied with ISO New England to construct a 96.9 megawatt project in Wyndham and Grafton. If that comes along, we're just going to be sacrificing more communities and more people and more families who will find that they won't be able to live in their homes. Is that how we really want to build our state's renewable energy infrastructure? So we have some real problems that have come out of this legislature, and I am here to tell you, it has to change. You have to fix it. We cannot go on this way. I mean, I can help people participate in the Public Service Board process, and it won't make a bit of difference. They will just keep rubber stamping as long as you tell them that you want more renewables. So you got to figure out what it is that you want to do.
Well, what I would like you to do right now is to see if we can focus on H.40, and if you have specific language that you would either like put in or substituted, or...
I would like you to add language requiring the utilities to create programs that enable Vermonters to voluntarily pay more for renewable energy, similar to the CBPS Cow Power program.
Okay.
You know,
Have these written down?
that is something that Vermonters want renewable energy. It costs more. We've got to make that more honest. This rec selling is really ruining our state's reputation in terms of renewable energy. As I said, I would recommend adding language requiring full disclosure of ownership of renewable energy credits in all promotional materials, applications for CPGs, and CPG approvals. Recommend adding language that creates vastly more transparency with the public, so that Northern Power Systems has dashboards. You can look and see what's happening with the Bolton wind turbine. We need that with all these renewable energy projects. It's all there online. It's all too hidden. This is new energy. Let's be more transparent about it.
Should probably do that with all energy.
Right.
Maybe all the coal and natural gas energy
Well,
too.
every day I look at the ISO New England chart, and I see, right now we're running 20% coal and oil in the region. But there is no transparency around wind or solar. I mean, I know it's totally technically possible, but you're asking people to accept 2 megawatt projects in their front and backyards. They at least should be able to go see if it's producing anything. And how do we create those connections? We do it through transparency. I would recommend that this bill add a way for there to be more of a connection between the people who are being asked to live with these cited projects and their ability to purchase the electricity directly. That's the piece, especially with the distributed generation, that is missing right now. If you want community scale projects, then enable the communities to work with developers on where they're sited and where, who's buying the power. And to learn that Sun Common is selling the RECs just sort of for their community solar, it's like, what are we doing here? What I'd like you to do with this bill is keep the part repealing speed and put the rest of it through next year. But give us time to work on the piece that creates more incentives for more renewable energy. You're trying to put something in place for 2017. It takes the Public Service Board a year to write rules. Why? This is a complicated bill. It has taken me days to understand what's in it. And we need more time to make sure that it's done in a way that doesn't continue harming our communities. It's all about benefiting the utilities. I'm begging you to please at least give equal time to Vermonters in every one of our communities who is being faced with new proposals that they have absolutely no say in at all. It is, as a realtor said the other day, it's not the Vermont way at all, the way we're doing renewable energy. And it makes me very sad, because I'm a big supporter of renewable energy, and especially solar, and the way it's being done right now is so wrong. And this bill just perpetuates this. And I would ask you to take the time before you put yet more programs into place. Yes, do away with speed, let the utilities meet those goals with Hydro-Quebec regs. Continue to sell the wind and solar so it keeps rates down. But the rest of it, what's the hurry? Why do we have to rush into something that's going to create yet more of this without getting any time at all for doing it right?
Well, I would submit, for example, that to just do tier 1 and not have a tier 2, you would effectively close down the rec center. Because I don't think that the other states would look at what we were doing as anything but another shell game. That's what they would say. And
That's what it looks like to me now.
It would devalue the recs. Tier 2, which is the incentives to continue building out renewables in the state, is what creates value to recs. So without having those incentives and just saying, okay, have tier 1, which just says we're going to retire the speed program, and we're going to turn to a rec program that basically utilities can meet on the day 2017 arrives with probably not doing anything. I would really worry about whether or not what that would do to rate impact, and I'm not willing to take that chance.
Well, are you willing to continue this regime that we're under, where we're just open season for the developers,
Well,
without giving the renewable benefits to Vermonters?
Well, we're certainly we're open to whatever problems that people say that there are with real solutions. I haven't heard any real solutions yet. I hear a lot of, we have a lot of problems. I get the emails, but we have to work. We created a system because back in the day when folks wanted renewables built, they weren't being built. So we kept saying, well, how can we make it more attractive for being built? Yes, there is an automatic stamp out process at the Public Service Board for hundreds of projects. Those are the net metered projects. Those are the ones that folks says those are not really large projects, although they've
gotten up to 500
they've gotten
kilowatt.
larger. You're absolutely right, but for the majority of them, they're the backyard on the roof ones. Those are the ones. Well, I know the ones you're talking about. I'm not arguing the fact that there are issues.
The biggest size solar project in New Hampshire was on the news recently? 900 kilowatts. That's the largest solar project in New Hampshire. We are so far ahead of the other New England states except Massachusetts in what we're doing.
So is that bad?
The way it's being done is bad, yes.
So you keep, I'm sorry, but you keep saying the way it's being done.
The way it's being done,
And
where...
so what way is that? So, if we're gonna look to change things, we need to know what the specific problems are, what the outcomes that folks are looking for. If folks are looking for, I don't want solar anywhere in anybody's
That's
site.
not what people are saying.
I don't know that.
That's not what people are saying. We've been going around and listening to what people are saying at the Public Service Board hearings for sites where people are just completely taken aback, where somebody wants to put 1.89 megawatts of solar in a residential neighborhood.
Well, I would agree with that.
And what they all say is, we want solar.
Right.
We want to be able to be a part of this. We want to be a part of how to choose the sites. So I have come up with a suggestion for how to create an opportunity for people to work together. Now, if you want to put in law, developers have to go to regional planning commissions first or municipal planning commissions first, that would help. At least, you know, the planning commissions are getting the 45-day notices. Nobody's going and talking to the systems that we have in place. We could have conservation commissions, energy committees, we could have municipal planning commissions, some local context so that the site is chosen with the cooperation of the community.
Circling around about the transparency, and this is going back to some testimony we heard earlier. Ferrisburg has the megawatt solar farm, one of the first ones, 1,000 kilowatts, and they got a website. Out of the 1,000 kilowatts, right now it's producing around 11 kilowatts. So it's a sunny day, and I brought this issue earlier, snow. You live in Vermont, snow. And there's a graphic example that solar limitation in Vermont, snow is huge.
I was on one site visit with one developer who was asked, well, what about winter? He said, oh, we just don't factor it in between December and February. We just don't expect to get any.
I do think it's important to note that Germany has a lot more solar than we do, and also is more overcast than we are, and it's working there pretty well.
There were panels today that were totally snow covered. The ones next to the McDonald's that are on Route 4, that are trackers that can adjust more. The snow today, I mean, they slid right off my panels when I went out with the squeegee. But the fields, 2 megawatt fields that they're actually angled for summer sun. They're not sliding off. So that's
No, but it's my understanding that if a solar project is not producing, they're not getting paid. And if the allegation is that they don't produce anything, then how is it that people are continuing to be able to develop it? Because there's a cash flow based upon the sale.
This one developer made it very clear that he just, his cash flow worked
Right.
without it.
Right.
That was the most clear, direct,
Well,
honest thing I've heard about it, was
Well,
that it just wasn't counting on it.
that works, but I'll tell you another similar story. Burke Mountain's got a wind turbine at the top, and I heard people complain, that thing is never running. How could that be? That thing is never running. So I inquired about it, and I found out that they voluntarily shut it down in the winter because people are skiing under it and everything, and it outproduces whatever their projections were in the non-winter months. So that's the way that works. It's not that
And
it's
that one
not
had a neighbor who had to
productive.
abandon his condo because he was sick from it. So there are these, there are trade-offs that are happening.
I'm not trying to, I'm trying to say we got to deal with facts. If there's no cash flow, if there's no money being generated, because there's no power being generated, then why are these things being built?
Well, getting back to the idea of doing joint fact-finding and mutual gains negotiations, that's one of the things that people are feeling like we're not getting good deals. Our towns are not getting the taxes that they would get for an equivalent development if it was anything else. The structures that are being put in place very much benefit the developers and the utilities and not our communities. And so doing more of this seems to be folly at this point. When somebody said to me the other day, who had stayed up till wee hours of the morning writing a filing, he lives in New York City, and he said, Vermont to me was always special because it cared about our communities and it cared about our aesthetics, and I guess that's not true anymore. And that's the way people are viewing what's happening with these developments that are taking from our communities without people feeling like they're a part of it.
Well, I think that most of us are aware that there have been issues and that there are issues with solar siting. And I think that most of us here are more than willing to tackle that issue in a real thoughtful way, and certainly so that community voices can be heard, and certainly that these projects should be built in the best places possible that satisfy the energy requirements in the best way possible, and I think we can get there. But I think that is a big enough issue that it deserves its own path.
Well, I think that if you pass out this bill the way it's written, you're not giving any place for there to be the opportunity
Well, I
to
think
change the system.
the bill really doesn't take effect until 2017.
Which is why I'm saying,
So
can we take the time
Well,
in
that's
next
what,
year
but that's
to
what we
work
do.
on it?
We have something in place.
And
but we-
so add a citing piece that puts it in place too, so that we're promising that this.
We can add, there is language that we can add in that instructs that gives the Public Service Board the ability to make sure that projects are cited from their perspective in the best possible way.
And what kind of language is that?
Well, it's been developed, and I can't
I
bring
mean,
it out.
what I'm seeing is,
We can
ideas
offer.
about screening. Sorry, that doesn't cut it at all. Requiring planting a row of trees, that doesn't get at the.
But I don't think we're gonna solve every specific individual project that comes along, specific issue in any one general bill.
Well, I think that the opportunity that I have suggested to you is to make use of an existing infrastructure that we have, to require the developers to go early to the local communities so that we can be a part of the discussions. This happens all the time in Act 250, where when you have the district commission process without lawyers, you have people who will come in with ideas on how to change the project, and they end up with better projects. Most of them get approved. It's not stopping something, it's creating a better dynamic and a better opportunity, and we're squandering that opportunity right now. You are creating opposition by allowing this system to perpetuate.
So before Rebecca asks her question, I have spoken to developers, and we know that there are good developers, and we know that there are bad developers. And the good developers have told me that and these are the ones where there has not been much issue where they cite these things, because they on their own go out into the community way ahead of time. They don't want these issues. This is no good for them. They want everybody to be as satisfied as possible. So we have to be able to find a way that controls or weeds out the bad developers.
Well, I haven't seen any of those yet. I mean, we've had it, and
So you
sometimes
don't
in the
think there's been one solar project that's been done in the entire
Oh, I think there's
state?
some very good ones. The Pownell Solar Project, people like that citing very well. The one that's at Shelburne Farms. There are some really, I mean, we don't need to clutter up our landscape. We should find the built landscape, with the one that's at the landfill in Rutland, you can barely see. There are plenty of sites that we can use first. One of the things people really are complaining about is that we are not doing anything innovative. I mean, I kind of bristle at the idea of energy innovation when we are doing the bottom of the barrel siting on solar. There are plenty of good opportunities to site solar in a way that does exactly what you want to do,
Right.
but we're not doing it.
Well, I'm not arguing with you there. I think that's right.
And we need to have developers that it appears that are required to work with the local communities first.
So I'm just interested in following up on the idea that you had about using the Act 250 district coordinators in a siting process. I'm not sure I fully understood what the idea was, but so I guess this may be a two-part question. It's maybe for you to explain your idea more, but I also wanted to maybe ask a little bit about an alternative, because you mentioned that you're on the Rutland Regional Planning Commission and also on their Energy Committee. And I'm curious if you think it's possible for either regional planning commissions on a regional basis or a town-by-town basis to work with community members to figure out for a community what makes sense for a well-sited project in that community, and to be pretty specific about where, if you were, say, asked to carry a load of, I don't know what it would be for Rutland County, but let's just say it's 40 megawatts. Where would you put that as a community? What would you find most acceptable for your community? And what mix of solar and wind would you find most acceptable for your community? Do you think that's a role for the regional planning commissions, that they could undertake that and work with communities? And I suggest it because I know it's happened in Massachusetts. I know that they did that on a town-by-town type basis, and the GIS data were pretty specific about where
Well,
projects
I
would be
think that
located.
the first challenge is capacity. The regional planning commissions are already doing a tremendous amount.
Yeah.
And so I think that the biggest attribute that the regional planning commissions bring to this is the GIS abilities. And fabulous at all the regional planning commissions. Their mapping and GIS capability is amazing. The Energy Committee was recreated recently at the Regional Planning Commission at the request of the towns who are desperate for language to put in their town plans to do something about this solar steamroller. We started updating the regional energy chapter back in like September or October. We meet once a month. We don't meet in December. We're behind. It's a strange construct. So you're either asking the staff to do it, or you're asking volunteer members who are having to come for this energy committee. They're having to come at 4:30 for that, and then we have the regional issues committee or community issues at 5:30, and then we have the full commission at 7. It's a beast that, on its own, you would have to add money to give the regional commissions the challenge of doing it. Then you're putting us as regional planners in the role of siting, which is not anything that we've ever had to do. So you're turning regional planning commissions. Planning used to be about vision. Now we have to make the language specific in certain instances for regulatory purposes because of Supreme Court decisions. Okay, so let's say that Rutland was told you have to put Rutland County, 40 megawatts. Well, first of all, we've already turned down 100 megawatts of wind. Been defeated in one area, 7 towns, another area, 4 towns. It's just a technology that people do not want to live around, and they will fight to the death to make it not happen, between that and the ecological damage. So wind is kind of a non-starter. Solar, I think it's a challenge. I know that in my town, as we were updating our town plan, what we decided to do was to say all wind and all solar shall, above a certain size, shall go in our commercial industrial district, which happens to be where the only 3 phases anyway. So that's how we addressed it. We didn't say this field, that field, this field, that field. The board has, and I did a review of all of their decisions from November back to May, of all their town plan, everything that addressed town plans, and regional plans, and they're pretty boilerplate. They say the town has not set any conservation goals for this site. The town has not written a clear written community standard for this site. So you have to identify every single field. Could we identify 40 acres or 40 megawatts worth of places to put them? I think the first thing people would say was, well, what about the Diamond Run Mall and all the parking lots around there? What about the rooftops? What about Home Depots and their parking lots? I mean, this is what's happening in Germany. Why aren't we doing more innovative? Because it costs more. Well, okay, we don't know the dollars. I'd love to see a package of what the whole financial picture is for 150 kilowatt, 500 kilowatt, and 2 megawatts. And then we'd know if they're raking in the dough and leaving us with peanuts, we'd know what, that's why I'm saying more transparency. So the regional planning commissions, I think it's a good idea, but I think it's problematic partly because we don't have the capacity, and it's putting them in a role of doing something that, ideally, could towns come together and identify? Rutland County has 27 towns.
So I guess so let's just assume you had the extra capacity. Say somehow we miraculously found some money to pay you, pay the regional planning commission, or pay a contractor. Do you think it's possible, though, for towns to work cooperatively and collaboratively to figure out where they would site renewable energy?
I think it's a very difficult structure to work with.
And I guess I would also put in there, I grew up in Vermont. I grew up in Burlington, very close to Lake Champlain. I don't think I had any idea growing up where my electricity came from. Had no idea that mountains in West Virginia were being destroyed for me to be able to turn on my lights, or at the time to have electric heat, which was, a product of the 60s and 70s. I see for my children that it's much more educational for them to see solar panels in the field or wind turbines and to know that this is the price of energy, and that energy is not free. It's not free in terms of money, and it's not free in terms of environmental impact. And what we try to do is to minimize that to the greatest degree we can. And what I would be, interested in seeing if we could come up with a process for towns and regions to agree on where energy should be best sited. But to think that we're going to ever come up with a perfect solution is unrealistic, because for energy there really is no solution. But I appreciate your comments and and the challenges that a regional planning commission would have doing this task.
Well, I've thought about it quite a bit and
Yeah.
tried to figure out how to make it work, and I don't see that they have the capacity or that it's the appropriate role. That's why I do think that the Act 250 infrastructure has the capacity, and then you could have members of municipal planning commissions, you could have, a stakeholder process brings in the stakeholders.
You could do it through, I think it's just as hard actually for the district coordinators and district commissions to do this as the regional planning commission. So, it might be hard for the regional planning commissions and the volunteer boards for all the reasons you've said. But frankly, I think it's probably similarly hard for the district commissions.
Well, they would just be facilitating the conversation.
Well,
That
that's
would
why I
be
think regional planning commissions could do that.
We gotta move.
Okay. Well, it's very
Yeah,
interesting.
thank you on that.
Just a final request.
Sure. We have lots of other people.
Well,
calling.
no, it's not a question or anything. I know you sent us email. Have you submitted any written testimony on this?
No,
Could you just put the highlights and send it to us as a committee
And I'd love to see your
in
diagrams.
your fancy charts,
okay.
if they're in an electronic form?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll submit those sections of the bill that I referred to also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Walsh, what is you travel, what is are you up here all the time?
No, full-time, not full-time job.
So you're okay for a while, because we have Mark with
New
us?
Haven's an hour and a quarter, so
Okay.
roll through your schedule, and we'll come on when you're ready.
Okay. Thank you. Mark?